Oh, and here we go again. Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen. I don't know why I said that. Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a strategy, a concept, a practice, an exercise, programming, something that we use in the realm of autism and neurodivergent fitness, and bring it to you in a digestible, usable fashion. That was a run-on sentence. Anyway, in this edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training, I'm going to be talking about something a little bit different, although it pertains to everything that we do. Ooh, mysterious. Before I get started, please definitely subscribe so that you never miss another edition of Tuesday Training. Hint, it comes out on Tuesdays, so if you're going to miss it, it's probably Wednesday. But anyway, that doesn't matter. So subscribe so that more people can see this and get the information that they need so that they can meaningfully and effectively train the autism and neurodivergent population in fitness and movement and generalize those skills to everyday life, for what we call ADLs, activities of daily living. So what do I mean by something a little bit different but pertains to everything? I'm going to be talking about the difference between, because I won't say everybody asks me about this because that's not true, but every once in a while I get a question about equipment and can we just start out with body weight? And usually what that means is we don't want to invest yet in equipment, or it may be too expensive, or is body weight going to be the notion that body weight exercises are going to be simpler than having the right equipment. Now, I will start out from the onset by saying that in autism fitness programming, we have equipment packages through both Perform Better and through Hyperwear that have the minimum equipment that is needed to run an effective fitness program. Can you get the stuff off Amazon and anywhere else too? Yeah, sure. The main takeaway is you do need some equipment, but why do we need equipment? Why can't we just start with body weight? Well, first of all, we have to start with goals. What are the goals in our training program? And do we have an exercise program? Again, I'm narrowly defining exercise programming by what we're doing most in autism fitness programming, and that's going to be strength and resistance-based training through a full range of motion, because that is going to have the most beneficial effect that generalizes to those ADLs, or activities of daily living, if the exercise is primarily composed of resistance training, full range of motion in all of the major movement patterns: push, pull, squat, carry, and hinge. All right. So there's a difference between what we define as, let's call it strength-based exercise, and moving around a little, or moving around a lot. Various combinations of balancing or jumping around, or arms all the way over your head and then arms to the ground, which is moving. And I guess technically it can be considered exercise. I mean, it's better than standing still or sitting still, but we have to look at it for what the benefits are. And one of the issues of just saying exercise is good is that it way overgeneralizes what we mean by exercise and its actual benefit. You can say that driving is good. It gets us from one place to another, but driving on the wrong side of the road, not so good. And driving with 3 full tires and 1 flat tire, also not so good. And driving without a steering wheel, again, not so good. So even though it's not the greatest comparison on the face of the planet, still we need to narrow down the definition so that we actually know what we're talking about, because we can also say, oh, here's a better one. If we say food is good, well, yeah, sure, at a baseline level, food means that we're not going to starve, but then we need to start talking about the nutritional value of different food, and then get into dietary and nutritional stuff, right? Better analogy there than the car one, but that was the first one I thought of. Anyway, so we have exercise, again, predominantly resistance-based, and then moving around a lot. And unfortunately, again, a lot of what I see in the autism and neurodivergent fitness space are programs that just involve moving around a lot under the guise, the false assumption that it's going to be accessible and beneficial because, oh, no equipment required. Well, if you want an effective program, sorry, some equipment is required. So to demystify some of the issues around, oh, body weight is easier. Number one, it depends on what we're talking about as far as the body weight exercises. So let's take a push-up, for example. Push-up is a phenomenal upper body exercise, particularly for the chest, the triceps, a little bit of shoulder action there as well, certainly some trunk stability, mainly upper body strength movement. For not only the neurodivergent population, but for many neurotypical people, doing not 10, not 15, but a proper push-up, very difficult. The push-up only requires a floor and the use of your upper body, right? However, I can tell you that many, if not most, of the autism and neurodivergent athletes that I start out with cannot do that full or even an incline push-up to start with when we first begin training together, right? And over time, we modify it and develop those skills. There are modified variations of the push-up that we teach in the Autism Fitness Certification course, but just because it's a body weight exercise does not make it easier necessarily. Same thing with a dip, right? So many, if not most, people cannot do a dip to begin with. Phenomenal, can be a chest, more of a tricep exercise, but pushing your own body weight up and to a full lockout and extending up. Again, very difficult exercise. A pull-up. Again, there's a reason why we have our athletes in autism fitness programming doing a band pull down, more of a lat pull down, engaging a lot of the same muscles instead of a pull up, because again, an exercise that the vast minority of the neurotypical population can do for even one rep. So then we get into other, what can generally be categorized as calisthenic exercises like jumping jacks or marches or some of the animal-based movements that I really used to use more, and now I've basically abandoned just because found better things to do that have a higher benefit to cost ratio, right? Maybe some gains in mobility, perhaps, but again, I've largely moved away from that stuff, the evolution of autism fitness training. So what we're left with there is some calisthenic stuff like, the go-to is kind of, let's all do jumping jacks or jumping around. Great, why? For what? Like, what does it build? There's a little bit of cardiovascular performance, I suppose, or cardiovascular benefit. Some kinesthetic awareness, but really it's relegated just to the jumping jack itself. Doesn't make it bad necessarily. It's just like, you can't take one exercise and say this is fitness. Same thing with, hops or shuttle runs or anything like that. You don't need a lot of equipment, but does that make it as effective as a squat, for example, to strengthen the lower body? So the first thing we have to ask, coming back to the foundation, is what is the goal here? Is the goal just to move around a bunch? But because can you do that without equipment? Yeah. Is it going to progress? Probably not much. I mean, how many jumping jacks are you going to do? How many hops are you going to do? How many times are you going to shuttle run back and forth before there's a plateau, before it's not really doing anything? And none of those exercises really develop strength all that well anyhow, beyond like the first 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions for someone who is untrained or completely detrained. So in order to maximize the training time, we do have to incorporate some, not much, but some equipment. With that squat, if we have a box or a bench or a stable platform that the athlete can squat onto, if they don't already have stability through that full range of motion, very important for emphasizing all the benefits of the squat, then great, we can utilize that platform and we can modify the exercise for that athlete, right? If the athlete cannot yet do a pull-up, which again, in the 20 something years that I've been doing this, I've had very few athletes who started out in their programming being able to do a pull-up. Well, then we need a relatively functionally equivalent exercise for the upper back and to develop, lat and pulling strength. So we use a standing band row and a band pull down, and even for more advancing athletes, body weight row. Or we can also have a cable row if an athlete advances to the point where they can use a cable. All of these, again, are functionally equivalent or similar pulling exercises, but you need the equipment in order to do them, right? Because it's not going to work with just body weight alone. So yes, sometimes there is an expenditure threshold, and there's only so much in the budget, but can you get, especially again for the autism and neurodivergent population, can you get these same benefits from exercise without equipment? No, because when we take most of these fundamental movement patterns, it's about moving weight or moving against resistance. And it's very difficult in some exercises. An overhead press, for example, unless someone is doing a handstand press, which I don't recommend, unless you're really into that sort of thing, and then go for it. Then you need some means of overhead pressing. Do you want to pick up 2 heavy rocks and press them? Probably not the safest thing. That's why we utilize sand bells or the soft bells, again, made by Hyperwear, because they are safe and effective training tools. So the idea that body weight is a great introduction, and we don't have to buy equipment just yet. We can just start with body weight. You can. It's not going to be very effective. And what about this exercise? What about that? A lot of the body weight exercises start being the same. Like, we're going to reach overhead, and then after that, we're going to do jumping jacks. Kind of similar. Well, what about, marching steps? Great. You can do marching steps for, 30 seconds, but after like 3 rounds of that, again, it's not going to really have a net benefit. So first, we have to decide, what is the goal of this program? Is it exercise and developing meaningful, generalizable skills, or is it moving around a lot, and just doing that? Is it just burning a few or some calories, moving around in a bunch of different ways? Okay, great, but it's not doing the same thing as resistance training. So the answer is yes, some equipment is necessary, especially in the beginning for our autism and neurodivergent athletes to participate meaningfully in a fitness program, rather than just calling it a fitness program and saying, okay, we're going to do a bunch of crawls and then raise our hands over the ceiling and then jump around a lot. That's movement, but it's not necessarily foundational exercise that's going to go anywhere from there. I do hope that I'm explaining that in a way that's conducive to to getting it. But that's the start. And the reason that I bring this up again is I've had questions about that. Do we have to buy equipment? Well, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is yes, and everything that I've prefaced this with as well. But the good news is, number one, you don't need a lot of equipment. Most of the equipment that we use in our autism fitness programming can be pushed into a corner of the room, not long enough to gather dust because we want to be using it on a regular basis, but can be used in a variety of different fitness settings as well, and can be used for a very long time. Worst case scenario is eventually you have to buy a little bit more because the athlete is getting stronger, so we're using more weight. Maybe some more resistance bands, some more sand bells, but ultimately nothing that is going to blow the budget out of the water. So that is a synopsis of the reasoning for equipment versus no equipment. It seems on the surface like, equipment is going to be harder and more challenging, but that's really not the case. I'd love to know your thoughts and your comments on it. If you have any questions about equipment selection or what makes for a good program, I'd love to answer those. If you have anything that you want me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, leave that in the comments below as well. Thank you for watching, and I think that's it. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. If you are ready to become an Autism Fitness certified pro, go over to autismfitness.com. You can learn all about the curriculum, download the course syllabus, and you can even register and begin your coursework today. That's it. Yes, that is it.